2 weeks ago, I updated my legendary time sector system course. It's the 5th anniversary, so happy birthday to the time sector system. Now, I did promise at the time that I would do a Q&A session, and here it is. Here's the Q&A session. So let's get started with the first question, which is, what is the time sector system? Well, the time sector system is a task management system that's based around when you will do a task rather than what you have to do. You see, the problem that most people will have is that we have a lot of stuff coming in. We have a lot of things to come in, and that is never, ever going to stop. Always, stuff is just going to keep coming in. If it's not coming in from your boss or your clients, it's coming in from your family and friends. It just never stops. Now, the problem here is it doesn't matter how much stuff you have to do if you don't have the time to do it. And the time sector system organizes your tasks rather than what you have to do. It organizes your stuff by when you will do it. The only decision you have to make is, when am I going to do this task? Is it going to be this week, this month, next month, or sometime in the long-term future? And that's it. You're just essentially asking yourself 3 questions. What is it? What do I need to do? When am I going to do it? And that's how you process your inbox. So that's the first question. Next question is a very frequently asked question is, well, if you're not managing your projects in your task manager, where are you managing your projects? Projects are managed in your notes app. It's a more logical, natural place to manage projects. You can throw your emails, documents, screenshots, message links, anything into a notes app. Stuff that you cannot throw into a task manager. So essentially all you have to do once you've set up the project note in your notes app is just have a single task that tells you to work on project X or work on project Y. Now, one other question that's kind of linked to this is, well, what about those simple, easy little tasks related to a project that don't require you to go and reference the project note? All you would need to do then is just actually put that task into your task manager. That might be follow-up Phil or follow-up Philomena. Whatever you decide it is, you can just add that task into your task manager and perhaps put in brackets as to what project it relates to, just in case you need to reference a material or something or a note inside that project note. And that also helps you because if you are following somebody up and they're being a little bit slow, you can just add a quick note into the project note saying, I followed up with Alan and he said he will get it to me by the end of the week. And you just date stamp that little note. You've got all the information you require regarding that project in a nice, easy place. Question 3, how do you get all your next week tasks into this week? Now, this is actually important that you use a manual touch here. This is where the weekly planning comes into effect. If you try and automate this, that's how you're going to start building up backlogs and overwhelm because you've not intentionally decided that these are the tasks that I'm going to do this week. You're relying on some kind of automation that doesn't know how you're feeling. It doesn't know whether you had a fight with your partner this morning. It doesn't know if your dog is sick. It doesn't know any of that information. That's the problem with automating this system. Any system, automating it is designed basically to make you just become overwhelmed. This is once a week where you sit down and intentionally decide what is important next week, and you move any task in this month, next month, or this next week folder into your this week folder. Now, one caveat here is watch the number of tasks you're putting into this week. What I find a lot of people do is they get a little bit over ambitious and start feeling they can do a lot more than they realistically can. This is why it's very important when you're doing the weekly planning to have your calendar open. If you're away on a training course all day, or as in my case yesterday, I was away at the dentist all day, Now, I'm not going to get a lot of work done because it's a 3-hour drive for me there. It's an hour in the dentist chair and a 3-hour back. That's 7 hours gone where I cannot do any work in the office. So you're going to be very aware of where you are meant to be on a given day. So that will give you an accurate idea of how much time you have available for doing tasks. And remember, it doesn't really matter how much you've got to do if you don't have the time to do it. So you manually, every week, once a week, you manually move tasks into your This Week folder, and that's making a decision based on how much available time you have for tasks next week. How do you distinguish between a work task and a personal task? Now, I generally advise against doing this because you have one life, in the fact that a task needs to be done. It doesn't matter whether it's a work task or a personal task. It genuinely doesn't matter. If you've got to call your bank, the only time you're going to be able to speak to your bank is during office hours, like usually between 9 and 5 p.m. Similarly, sometimes you may have some work to do in the evening. I know if you're on a video call and you're working across multiple different time zones, for example, you may have to do a meeting, an online meeting at 7 p.m. at night. There's a bit of give and take these days going on within your work. Now, there is an exception here. Some companies are very strict about their security, and you cannot have third-party task managers or even single-party task managers, if that's a word, on your work computer or your personal stuff on your work laptop. Okay, in those situations, you have no choice. You're going to have to use two actual task managers. You may use Microsoft To Do on your work laptop, and you may use something like TickTick on your personal one, or OmniFocus or Todoist or whatever. That's entirely up to you. But if you are in that environment, I would suggest using a task manager that is available online. So things like Trello, Asana, Todoist, all those applications are available online. One of my favorite all-time task managers, To Do, Teuxdeux, is also available online as a website. So you can actually just open up Chrome or Edge or Safari, and you can have all your tasks there. But generally speaking, I don't advise separating your personal and your professional life. You have one life. Trying to separate them, hoping that you could distinguish between the two, is not that easy. Also, because the way that task managers work, on a weekend, you don't have to see all your work tasks. It's just usually your personal tasks. And similarly, during the week, during the day, you're going to see your work tasks. So one system does work better, but if you have no choice, then I'm afraid you have to use two. How do you handle tasks that come in from email? Now, this actually does depend on what kind of task is coming in from your email. If it's just a simple reply to an email, or read a newsletter, or read some instructions from your boss, you don't put it into your task manager at all. It just goes into what's called an Action This Day folder in your email. But there are some emails that contain tasks that's going to require 3 or 4 or 5 hours worth of work. In that situation, you would move the task or the email into your task manager. Most task managers and email apps sing and work together. For example, Outlook works very well with To Do. Apple Mail works very well with Todoist. So you can actually just keep them, just drag the email into your inbox in your task manager, and then you can decide what the task is when you're processing the email. I would add a caveat there and just suggest that you actually send an email to the person who sent it to you. It could be your boss, it could be a client, for example, and just say, thank you for your email. I'm going to get onto your proposal or this project as soon as possible, and we'll get it back to you within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Always err on the go for a long period. The great thing about saying that when you're expecting to actually be able to do the task, by telling them in that email, if they have an objection to that, they'll say, oh, no, we need that sooner. Can you do it sooner? Or you must do it sooner if it's coming from your boss, and you can then make a decision about that when you get that email. But it does put you in control of when you're going to do the task. How often do you review your long-term and on hold folder? Good question. Now, this really does depend on you and how comfortable you are with this. Just to give you a benchmark, I review my long-term and on hold folder probably one at the end of every quarter. I do give myself 20 or 30 minutes to go through it. Now, there is a little secret point about the long-term and on hold folder. This folder is about eliminating, not accumulating. The idea is when you do go through that folder to see if there's anything that you can bring forward or must bring forward, is looking to see, well, what can I eliminate? What can I delete? I often put things in there that I think, oh, that's a really, really good idea. And I think, just not yet. Let's just hold on. I've got enough on my plate right now. Let's come back to that later. A few weeks later, when I look at that, or the end of the quarter, when I look at it, I realize, what was I thinking about? And then I will just delete the task. So there's a little bit of here with the long-term and on hold folder. It's really about eliminating, not accumulating. So when you do go through it, whether it's every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks or every month or every quarter in my case, the idea is what can I eliminate rather than what can I bring forward. So I would say review it every month, every quarter. That's roughly about a good timeline to be able to be able to go through that folder, review it and see what needs bringing forward. Where do you keep your grocery list? Great question. Actually, I keep my grocery list in Apple Reminders. My wife has an iPhone, I have an iPhone, we're both in the Apple ecosystem. So we have a shared grocery list in Apple Reminders. It also works great with Siri, so when I'm cooking and my hands are wet, I don't need to have to pick up the phone or add anything into a laptop or iPad. I can just get Siri to add an item to my shopping list. So in my case, being British, we say shopping list, not grocery list. So I just say add broccoli to my shopping list and Siri will do the work for me. Similarly, my wife does the same thing. So when I go, because it's my responsibility to go to the supermarket, and I will be going this afternoon, when I go to the supermarket this afternoon, that list is already up to date. My wife has added what she wants me to get, and I've added what I need to get. So the list is actually just automated by Siri, to be fair, and I go through the list when I'm at the supermarket. So I keep that separate from my Todoist. In my case, I use Todoist. I keep it separate from Todoist simply because Todoist is there for when I'm actually doing work or when I'm doing personal stuff like clearing up the studio. I may have got a list of things I want to do. And I keep the reminders, Apple Reminders, for my grocery list. It's just a superb little tool for things like that because it updates very quickly and it's so easy to share a list. How do you manage your deadlines? Well, I may be a little bit old school here, but I was always taught to keep my deadlines in my calendar. After all, the calendar is the sacred territory. I always have this policy and have done for probably 20 or 30 years, is what goes on my calendar gets done. My task manager is for random stuff that I may or may not do or may have to do. But my calendar, that's different. That's sacred territory, and that's where I put my deadlines. Because I am in the habit of doing a weekly planning session every single week, I also look at my calendar every morning, and I look at it in the week view, not the day view. I get to see what's coming up, what's required, because I put it in the all-day section of my calendar. It's what I was doing in the 1990s, it's what I've been doing all the way through the 2000s and still do today. All my deadlines are managed in my calendar. That's where they go. It's a natural place for them to go. I don't need to make my task manager more complex by adding start dates and due dates. That just confuses things. It's another thing to think about. It's another layer of complexity that doesn't really help me. Now, I did try to do its deadline feature or due date or whatever they call it, deadlines I think it is, and it started telling me you've got 4 days before the deadline. I'm going, oh, and I could feel a level of anxiety rising just by seeing that I'm running out of time. On the calendar, I can see that on Thursday I must produce this piece of work. I can see that when I do my weekly planning. I can then add any tasks into my task manager to make sure that I meet that deadline. So I just keep it natural and keep all my deadlines, and do advise people to keep all their deadlines on their calendar. Can you date tasks not in your this week folder? Absolutely. There are times when you know a task has to be done in 6 months' time or 7 months' time, or perhaps at the end of the year. There are times when you already know the date something needs to be done, in which case, by all means, add a date to it. Another one that you may find useful is, let's imagine that you have a project that's been put on hold, or you've decided to put it on hold for a period of time, say 2 or 3 months, and you want to come back and review that project and make a decision whether you want to restart the project or not. I would add a date to it, and I would just have a single task in my task where it says review project Y, and then I would have a date on it. It might come up on the 1st of June, might come on the 1st of August. Once that task pops up, I can then make a decision about what needs to happen next. I can then decide what I'm going to do in order to get the project moving forward. So yeah, if you're absolutely sure of when a task can be done, then add a date to it. And you can also add dates when you want to review something, but right now you haven't got the time, or it's just too early to review a project. By all means, just add a date, say the 1st of August or the 1st of June. One of the great ways of doing that is that when you come to the weekly planning, you will see it, and then you can make a decision closer to the time as to what you want to do. So I hope all these questions have helped. I know I get a lot of these questions, so they come up in the student discussions in the course. I also get direct emails, but the time sector system has helped thousands of people all over the world just to get back in control of their time and to feel a lot less anxious and overwhelmed, and just have that wonderful state of organization of knowing where everything is, when you're going to do something, and you know you've got the time to do it. And that's really the essence of the time sector system. Now, if you want to learn more about the time sector system, I'll put a link in the show notes below so you can learn more about it. There's blog posts, there's podcasts, and there's also the course itself. And if you want to learn what new in this 2025 update, then this video up here is definitely the next one to watch.